Hi guys. So welcome to your first lesson on economics. So today we'll go into a little bit about what economics as a subject is all about, and we'll delve into the core problem that is something that the entire subject is trying to answer. Is the core problem of economics, the basic economic problem, and then we'll have a little look about opportunity cost and how can you use some diagrams like the PPC curve to express opportunity costs. So first, let's dive straight in. So when many people think of economics, many people associate it with money, right? Many people associate economics with the science of money, or maybe a good subject to study to make a bank in the future. But actually, economics as a subject is all about, in reality, excuse me, um, the most efficient allocation of resources in the society, right? Since all the resources we have are finite, as you can see here, we have finite resources. What this means is that the things we have are limited. But then, when coupled with the unlimited wants of humans, unlimited wants, we all have desires and wishes like, oh, I want to buy a new flat, I want to buy a new car, I want to buy a new iPhone, I want to go on a plane trip, right? We have unlimited wants, but we have finite resources. So what this means is that we cannot satisfy all these wants, and we cannot fulfill everybody. So then we have this basic notion of scarcity. So what scarcity means is that basically it's this problem of having unlimited wants but finite resources. So we can't satisfy everybody. And that is why economics studies the most efficient allocation of resources, given the fact that there are scarce resources. So what this means is that economics as a subject is trying to find the most optimal allocation of resources to fulfill everybody, given the fact that we are limited in the things we can produce. So this leads us on to the basic economic problem, which is, firstly, what things do we produce? Given our basic economic problem, where we have limited resources, what do we produce? Do we produce beef? Do we produce phones? Do we produce cars? Do we produce wheat for food? So what are the things we produce? Secondly, how to produce these things? Do we produce them using farmland, manufacturing? Do we generate them through some form of machinery, like energy? So how do we produce these goods and objects? And thirdly and lastly, for whom to produce? So for who is this most necessary, right? So like, for example, children's toys, right? That would be obviously aimed towards children, because unless, I mean, most of the audience are children, right? So these three are also part of the basic economic problem. Basically, this is the economic questions that kind of try to answer this economic problem right here. The questions that try to help us answer this scarcity concept. So in economics, there's actually two main sections, you can say. So we firstly have microeconomics. So this is the study of individual households and firms. This is on a smaller level. So we study how firms act given different market structures. We study how consumers might act, what are the factors affecting consumer choice, etc. But then we also have macroeconomics. So what this is studying the global or national output of a country's economy. Alright? So this is on a much larger scale, and therefore we can ask questions about, how do we control inflation? How do we lower interest rates? What effects do exchange rates have on the current account balance? So we go into that later down the course. So, first concept of economics. Let's talk about opportunity costs, okay? So what this is the cost incurred when foregoing the next best alternative. So let's illustrate this with an example. Okay, say that you were to buy a phone here, right? Cost $9,000. But then with those $9,000, you could also have bought an iPad. iPad that costs $4,000, and speakers that cost $5,000. So by purchasing your first your first choice, you're foregoing your next best alternative, your second choice. Basically, by purchasing a phone, you're losing out on the ability to purchase an iPad and speakers, because you paid $9,000 towards your phone already. So that example illustrates how there's opportunity cost to potentially every purchase we make. For example, you buy McDonald's for $60. That means you're foregoing the ability to go buy KFC for $60, right? So that's opportunity cost. And actually, we can express this using a thing called the PPC curve, or sometimes in older textbooks, you might hear them calling the PPF curve. So what this stands for is the production possibility curve, or frontier. And this diagram illustrates the maximum combination of two goods, of the production of two goods, I should say, production in an economy. Okay, just highlight this, is important. So here you have a curve. So let's say you have good A, right? Let's say you have good A. So, and good B. Well, usually in an economy sense, you would call them capital and consumer goods. We'll go into that later. So let's say you produce 8,000 units of good A. You can only produce 6,000 units of good B, because you have limited resources, right? You have limited resources. Let's change the 4,000. Yes, let's change 4,000. Sorry, this is not the scale. Okay, let's not the scale. Okay, let's say 4,000 of good A, and you can only produce. You can produce 10,000 of good B. So my question too is, what is the opportunity cost of producing 8,000 units of good A? Okay, what is the opportunity cost of producing 8,000 units of good A? Alright, take some time and try to figure out the answer on your own. Alright, I'll assume that you have gone away and thought about it. Well, let's get into the question. So, when you produce good A, as you can see here, you're producing 8,000 units. But you can only produce 6,000 units of good B, right? And then on the second line, if you follow here, so 8,000, right? You can only produce 6,000 units of good B. But when you produce 4,000 units of good A, you can produce 10,000 units of good B. So by increasing by 4,000 units to produce 8,000 units, you're actually losing out on these 4,000 units here. You're losing out on these 4,000 units of good B to produce. So basically, your opportunity cost is highlighted here. You're losing out 4,000 units of good B. That's your opportunity cost. Okay? So this is actually a really common question, so I suggest you familiarize yourself with this concept. Okay. So let's take this one step further. Let's try to generalize this instead of good A and good B. Let's talk about capital and consumer goods. So what is a capital good? A capital good is a good used in the production of other goods. For example, a potato cutter that cuts potatoes into fries, that would be an example of a capital good, because that is a good used in the production of fries, right? Okay, so that would be a type of capital good. These are usually machinery, or factories, etc. So consumer goods are what you and me purchase on a daily basis. For example, hand sanitizer, masks, food, perfume, etc. Like anything we need, basically, that's a consumer good. So these are two main types of goods that we produce in the economy. So actually, there are actually some factors that affect both, that can shift the PPC curve outwards, or inwards. As you can see, let's label this curve C1, C2, and C3, just to be clear. So, let's say you're point A, right? You're in point A on curve C1. You can shift out to point B on curve C2. So what happened? Basically, okay, one assumption first. To be let's talk about the conditions of being on the curve and off the curve. As you can see here, D is off the curve, but A is on the curve. So why is that? Okay, so let's say on the curve, resources are being used fully. Okay, fully. As I said here, these are used fully, so there's no wastage. You're using all your resources in your economy to produce these goods, and that is why you're on the curve. If you're off the curve, like point D, which I've circled, the blue point D, you're not using full resources. There's some wastage in your economy. That means that you can't use them to their full potential. That means that you're losing out on the ability to be on the curve because you're not using everything you got in your economy to produce these goods. There's wastage here, and therefore there's an opportunity cost of not being on the curve. Okay, so let's look at some factors that can affect that can shift the curve in and out, because that can happen. So to shift out, that means your production capacity has increased, right? Your economy, well, essentially has grown bigger. So what can cause that? Well, it's easy. It's economic growth. That means your productive capacity increases. That means you can produce more amounts of goods. So for shift in, that means your productive capacity has decreased. So let's say increase productive capacity, decrease productive capacity, right? So what would happen that cause a decrease in productive capacity? Well, that would be things like war, recession, or natural disasters. So that means that the ability of your economy to produce has decreased, and that is why you could, as you can see, go from C1 to C3, and you produce less of each type of good. So that's it for today. Let's go over some recaps. So firstly, we talked about what economics is all about, the basic economic problem, the 3 questions that attempt to answer this problem in some sense. We then talked about the 2 main factors of economics, micro and macro. We went into opportunity costs, which is the cost incurred when foregoing the next best alternative. We illustrated this using an example of phones, iPads, and speakers. Then we went on the PPC curve, how we can illustrate this opportunity cost. We tried a question about it. And then we looked at the factors that affect the shift in or shift out of the PPC curve, and what are the conditions of being on the curve or off the curve. Well, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.